So welcome everybody to Steve and Friends. We've had some brilliant conversations, especially with some of our campus pastors in Queensland and Northern Territories the last few weeks. And that's exactly what I'm looking forward to right now, because I'm going to be chatting to DK, or Daniel, DK as we know him, and Lauren Kahika, who are our campus pastors in Coomera, which is pretty much the center of Australia, the center of the world. And they'll tell you all about that a little bit later, but they're fantastic people. And I really think that we're going to get a chance again to get to know somebody, not because of their position or their title or their role, but because of the real people that they actually are. And that's the reason why we love these two, and so do many hundreds and thousands of others as well. So welcome, DK. Welcome, Lauren. Thanks for taking the risk of letting me fire some questions at you, but you'll be all right. Don't worry about it. You'll get over this thing. It'll be fine. But firstly, DK, the name Kahika in Queensland anyway is really quite well known, because you're not as much a family as you are a tribe. Tell us about the Kahika clan. How many of you rascals are there?
There's a lot. My dad has a big family, has lots of brothers and sisters, and obviously a lot of cousins. And we all went to school as well. So there was almost, at one point, there was 20 Kahikas in one school when we grew up. So there's a lot of Kahika.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we never got picked on at school, I can tell you that much.
Pick a fight with one and you've got a whole tribe coming against you. That's absolutely. By the way, so what number do you come in the siblings?
Siblings, I am the oldest. So there's me and my brother. Immediate family, there's a family of four. So mum, dad, my brother Andrew, and myself. So I'm the oldest son. And
he's affectionately known as AK, just to keep the thing going in a uniform kind of manner. That's good. All right. So Lauren, tell us about your family. Where did you grow up, and tell us about your
So
family.
I was born in good old Blacktown in Sydney. And grew up more on the central coast of New South Wales. Nowadays, my parents, my dad lives in Brisbane. He's actually a bus driver. My mum lives in Coffs Harbour. My sister, she's a circus performer, and she lives with us at the moment. And
she is a circus performer. Hold on a minute. A circus performer. That's awesome. What does she do?
She's an aerial artist, so she does trapeze, and she travels the world with it. And she's amazing.
That is fantastic.
Incredible.
So have you got those same genes?
No. The opposite. So my parents don't know what they did, because growing up, not a Christian family at all. Did my first Holy Communion though with my grandparents, but not a Christian family at all. And they've ended up with, my brother was in the army, my sister ran off and joined the circus, and I was a pastor, and they're just like, what did we do?
What a mix. That's fantastic. So how did you two meet then?
We met at a church that I grew up with. I grew up going to, and Lauren was part of the youth group, and I think I saw her across the room, and yeah, and we were good friends, and we led on a team together in church as well. And
that's usually a very smart move. Very smart move for all young people who've got their eye on someone.
I never thought I'd do kids ministry before, but all of a sudden, I was on the kids team.
There you go, mate.
That's where
calling.
We got
So was he romantic, Lauren? I mean, was it love at first sight, or did he have to win you?
No, he actually was like, I didn't realize that there was anything going on. I thought we were friends. But things escalated, and he invited me on a date. And then I realized when he arrived, it wasn't a date. And I had dressed up as if we were going on a date. And he answered the door in like a white singlet and boardies and thongs. And I was like dressed up. And so I'm like, I've read this completely wrong.
Mind you, the date that we went on, she was dressed appropriate and I was underdressed.
Yeah, right. Okay. I hope we can find a photograph of that. That would be pretty awesome. If not, we'll just make one up. So don't worry about it. So how many years been married now?
Come on, babe, help me out.
Come on, DK. Straight in there.
13 years.
13 years. Good counting, mate.
Yeah.
You ran out of fingers and toes nearly then.
I did.
And you have 2 kids and 1 on the way. So we've got Harlem, who's 10.
Yes.
Zion, who's 5. By the way, those names are fantastic. How did you come up with the first 2 names, Harlem and Zion? They're cool names.
We just love
Who's the cool one of you?
We just love the name Harlem, so we just kind of ran with that one. And then Zion, I don't know, it just felt right.
Yeah.
But
There
everyone claimed that we were Jewish when we named Zion, or the doctor.
Yeah, right.
I was like, stay away from my child.
Yeah, right. And now you're pregnant with child, and you're going to have a little girl, which is fantastic. And when is she due? What month?
October, end of October.
Oh, very soon. So you're obviously not going to give the name away there, so we'll just have to wait. That'll be cool.
No,
now then, in your life, say that again.
I will tell you that Harlem named his new pet fish the baby name we were thinking of using.
No. So. Well, so what's the name of the fish then? No, move on. It's fine. So listen, you guys you've had an interesting background before we got to know you. We only got to know you the last few years. But an amazing kind of a bit of a tapestry of experiences, you could say, in different parts of Australia, doing different roles, which obviously enriches life and gives you experiences to draw upon right now. So you did Bible college, you did internship in church straight after marriage, which is a big challenge. You've been youth pastors, you've been campus pastors on the Gold Coast. That have been Generation Church, I imagine. You were 6 months in Newcastle. You were actually there when the church became Hillsong Church and Sanger and Keddy arrived. Hey, so that's an interesting one. And you end up in Dubbo. I mean, out of all of those things in Dubbo for business, running a hotel, which I want to hear about in a minute. But all of those experiences, what was the best bits and what was the toughest bit of all of that?
I think the best bit is that I think for us, the adventure of life and the adventure of following God has always been so genuine. So it's just hearing that whisper of God and then getting the wisdom of good, godly counsel and then being up for saying yes to what God's doing. That's probably been the best part of our life. And it's allowed us to have some pretty amazing, phenomenal, actually, adventures that have shaped us as pastors and people and shaped our marriage and our family and gifted us with like the best friendships ever just because we were up for crazy stuff that God might do. So
I think as well, the age of our son at the time wasn't at school as well, so we're able to just sort of venture out a little bit more, whereas now our kids are in school, so a little bit more settled with routine. So we sort of took the opportunity as well to be able to just go where God led us. And we learnt so much, and things that we can take into leading church now and what we do now, we can really grab a hold of some of the things that we're able to, just grab a hold of from the past and bring it into now our future. So
now you guys are known by so many people as being great pastors, loving people, serving people, and then I find out that you've run hotels. And you probably learned a few skills back there that you can certainly draw upon right now. So you end up running a hotel in Dubbo. Now, I love the name Dubbo. As an Englishman, they're the sort of names that make Australia. So this hotel, was this kind of 5-star or Fawlty Towers?
It was the opposite to 5-star. We got asked to move to Dubbo, and to be honest with you, I had never really heard or knew of Dubbo. I remember we're sitting in a classy restaurant in the middle of Sydney, and our boss at the time that was posting us or sending us to Dubbo to take on this sort of management rights type of setup business, he wrote it on a napkin, the word Dubbo. And being opposite him, I read that and I thought it said Dubai, because this hotel chain had hotels all around the world. And so I'm looking at Lauren and I'm cheering and I'm high-fiving and I'm like, we're going to Dubai. Like, we're going to Dubai. How cool is this? And Lauren's looking at me, shaking her head. We're meant to be impressing our boss, right? So, and so I turned to Lauren and I'm cheering and I'm saying we need to get our passport sorted and we need to get this. And Parliament at the time doesn't have a passport, so what are we going to do? And my boss, just the look on his face said enough to me that I looked like a complete idiot. And so, it was not Dubai, it was Dubbo.
It was double, mate.
Totally
Yeah.
different type of
And
red
you didn't need a passport for that, no. So great experiences. You end up back in Coffs Harbour.
Yeah.
Now, just to get this on a different level here, a different layer, if you like, of your lives. So there was a time. Could we suggest a pretty dark time, difficult time, Lauren, that kind of all came together at that season of your life? Do you want to tell us anything about that period?
Yeah, so we were in Coffs Harbour. We had planted a church as a part of the church we were a part of. So we were campus pastors. We loved our church. We had a 53-room hotel with a restaurant. We loved our business. We just had a newborn baby boy, which was Zion. And in the midst of all of this, I started to get really, really sick and physically ill. I didn't know what was going on. I was vomiting all the time. I had severe chest pains, was consistently booked in for ECGs and assessments with the local doctors and the hospital, and just really couldn't connect what was going on. And in this time, I happened to also be because of the timing of everything, some trauma from my past had been brought up when I had been sexually abused as a teenager, and I hadn't made the connection between the physical symptoms and what I was dealing with in confronting trauma. And so I was diagnosed formally with post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety and depression, which was really confronting for me because I was a pastor and worked all the time with people that were dealing with mental health struggles and hadn't seen those red flags in myself. And so, but it was just the hand of God over everything. And only discovered and only connected the dots because one of the nights where I ended up in the emergency ward and they were doing an ECG and trying to figure out what was going on with me physically, it was my local GP who had first talked to me about PTSD that happened to be rostered on the emergency ward that night. And she was like, okay, let me connect these dots for you. And so, but it was like my world came crashing down around me and it was completely out of control. I had no choice about it.
What was the sort of time gap between those two moments in your life? How long did it take to manifest?
Diagnosis? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So I was a teenager, so it would have been over 10 years. Wow. And I actually, in God, really had thought that we had dealt with this thing. And, was in a really good place and headspace about it all in terms of forgiveness and but just didn't realise the reality of how insidious trauma can be, and so
absolutely
was naive to that. And so it took 10 years, and then just through a coincidence of timing of different reports that I was filling out and things that I had to do that brought that trauma to the limelight, was basically thrown into consistent what's it called, like flashbacks and proximity to that trauma again. So that was kind of, it was over 10 years. Yeah,
it does show, it is indicative of the depth of effect that takes place on a human being when humans hurt humans. And it's probably why you're both so good at pastoring other people, because it's the reality of stuff that you've had to face, and how many people have had to go through the things that you've had to go through. So would you say, Lauren, that was rock bottom for you?
Yeah, I think particularly because I saw myself as such a capable, high capacity, high functioning person. And so then to find myself in a place where I couldn't get out of bed. I had to some days crawl to get into the shower. You know, here I am as a mum and I've got two little children, one 4 and one nearly 6 months, and I'm not able to feed them Weet Bix in the morning or care for them, and just not able to pull my life together. And then in the midst of that, the shame of, you know, for Daniel and I, we work so closely together and we love that. We run hard together. And so to watch him have to then pick up the weight of our world of pastoring and quite a big job of pastoring the local church that we were in, pick up that slack. pick up the slack of the business where, you know, for me, I really looked after the business side of the business, whereas he was operational and, you know, people focused. And so he had to learn how to do payroll and how to, you know, to do BAS and tax and all this stuff that is just at the same time as he's now also doing the school run and trying to care for a baby and then a sick wife as well. And it was really horrific. And I think one of the things we talked about in the car on the way over here, probably the hardest thing about that dark place was that, and I didn't know this at the time, but one of the symptoms of disorders associated with trauma is that your fight or flight kind of stays stuck on. And what that means is you're not able to experience or take on new information. And as a Christian, my revelation with God and that sense of Holy Spirit being so near had always been a huge part of my faith. And so in the midst of trauma, I wasn't able to have that sense of revelation. Physically, I wasn't able to feel like God was close. And so in the time of my life where I felt like I needed God the most, just physically and emotionally speaking, I couldn't find him, you know? And so that was probably the hardest thing, was feeling like just empty and then alone as well. Yeah.
So before we just talk for a moment about how to come through this, where you were at, DK, what was that season like for you, watching your wife go through what she's going through? How does somebody so on the inside relationally of that face that situation?
It was hell, to be honest. I think we had people around us that was helping us, and we had great support, and we still do have great support of friends that we had in Coffs Harbour as well. But it was tough. And Lauren knows this, but there were times where I would cry, and I would cry that much that the shower was the best place to be, because it sort of got lost. And it was difficult, like Lauren said, being mum and dad to the kids, running the business that was very profitable and very successful business, to pastoring an amazing church with great people as well. So it was massive. I think before we made the decision to really move back to the Gold Coast, because we have family and other great support here, I stayed there for an extra month to wind the business down, or to pass on the business and to transition the church as well. And so that was the hardest month of my life, being in Coffs Harbour for a month, and Lauren was on the Gold Coast here. That was difficult, but it was not easy at all.
No. So you end up back on the Gold Coast. You transitioned out of the business, the church, the responsibilities, back on the Gold Coast. What are the contributing factors that have helped you get through the situation? Because here you are. I mean, Lauren, you're a mum. You've got your job. You pastor a church. You speak on a platform. So you've come a million miles from rock bottom. But what were the contributing factors that got you from there to here?
Yeah, I think it was when we look back on that time, and even in the midst of it, it was undeniable that the hand of God was so present. And, I always say, people talk about faith, and they talk about, mountaintops, like believing for incredible things. And it's true that God can do incredible things, but I love in the Psalms the way that David speaks about the Father, and he talks about hiding under his wings. He talks about a faith that's hitting rock bottom and digging down. And I think even in as dark and as bad as a place it was, there was still this sense that God had us exactly where he wanted us. And it was just the kiss of heaven along the way from, at one stage I had to speak to a lawyer because of some of the things I was dealing with. And that lawyer, one of the girls at our church, she recommended the lawyer that happened to be really close friends with Daniel's brother, and they would have lunch on a weekly basis. So when I called him there was already relationship there and safety there. And so that was just the kiss of heaven. And I had a fantastic clinical psychologist in COFS, but we just wanted also a Christian psychologist as well. And the fact that we had ended up in COFS and there was just a prolific Christian psychologist pretty much walking distance from our house, whose waiting list was over a year long. You couldn't get in to see him, but he happened to have lived in Dubbo for a long time and been very close friends with our pastors. So when they called him, he cleared his schedule and 2 days later spent the whole day with us. And so it was just in the midst of the darkest of places, when there wasn't necessarily hope that things were going to get better, we could still see that God had us right where he needed us to be, and that's what gave us hope. And then as things, we had to commit and accept what we needed to do in order to get through this season. And so that was a lot of grief, giving up things that you love, and a church that we absolutely loved the people. We still do. We're still really close with them, and to be walking away from that and just actually accepting the season that you're in was a really huge thing. But then to commit to the journey. And for me, it was massive because, as I said, I like to see myself as a capable person. So I love to do stuff and I love to be involved. So it was really confronting to go into a season where I was basically told, you don't do anything. And because of the condition I was in, I'm an avid reader. I was saying to Daniel, I think I've read 45 books this year because I just read nonsense and I love it. But I couldn't even read a paragraph at that stage of my life. So, if you told me before I was unwell, you're going to have a year off, then my heaven would be to picture myself in the corner reading books for a year, but it was just not going to be my reality. And we had to accept that and just commit to doing that journey and to go through the pain of it all, knowing and holding on to faith and hope that things would get better.
Yeah. Well, you've come a million miles from those days. The beautiful thing when somebody gets their life turned around and God is involved in that is you can hardly even imagine the way people were, such as the work that God can do in someone. So anybody listening to this interview that either yourself facing the toughest of times or people in your world, people that you know, please take heart from what you're listening right now, because things can change. Your past can be the past. It doesn't have to continue to be your current reality or define your future. So a lot of faith that you put into people right there. And at the end, we'll just give a few tips maybe on screen of how people can find a little bit of help. But you referenced church there. Joyce and I and the whole Hillsong church world got to know you guys. How many years ago was that now? Was it 6-ish or something like that? 6 years ago maybe? Or
five and a half. Yeah,
5.5 years ago. And the church that you were part of, with 2 locations at that time anyway, in Burley and in Coomera, we were asked, or Hillsong Church was asked, to take responsibility for those churches. And because of my role in Queensland, and that fell to me to be the actual person who had the immense pleasure of getting involved with all you guys down on the Gold Coast. And one of the best things about the whole thing is meeting people like you. And they're the good bits of all of that. And here we are, 5.5 years later, the church flourishing. I think just before COVID, 1,500, I think was probably the average just on attendance on a weekend across our campuses. But you are the campus pastors in Coomera.
Yes.
Coomera. And so what's the role like there, DK? How would you explain the campus of Coomera to those people who have yet to have visited?
We love Coomera. For people that may be watching in, Coomera is right next to Dreamworld or Movie World, northern Gold Coast, and it's growing rapidly. There's a lot of families moving into this area.
Yeah.
You just have to walk down the parks to see that the type of people that are here, and it's just full of families. So,
That's fantastic. Just thinking back 5.5 years ago, I know the side of the story, obviously from my side of the story, because we got involved, but from yours, what did you know about Hillsong Church, like leading up to that transition?
I think for me, the one thing, because obviously we weren't coming, this is probably the first time we'd moved and it wasn't there was no ministry attached to it. It was just for our family. And so the one thing we knew about Hillsong Church and our experience having been at Hillsong Newcastle, even just for 6 months, and having had a little bit to do with you and Joycey, and visiting James and Alita on the Gold Coast when we were visiting our families, the one thing we knew is that this church is a safe church. Yeah. That when we bring our family here, that we can breathe and we're going to be loved on, and we can attend and we can experience God, and we know that it's a safe place for our family. And that was really what made us go, this is going to be, we already know it's home for us. So, yeah.
Well, that's so great to hear. That's fantastic. What about for you, DK? What's it like being in a Hillsong Church world?
I love it. I think we've got the best senior pastors in the world, Pastor Brian and Bobby. And I just love that, like, I constantly pinching myself to just what we get to be a part of. I think that, just like Lauren said, it's a safe church, but it's a church for everyone. And no matter where you find yourself, no matter, what you're doing the night before, that you can walk into the doors of our church and people love you. And our prayer is that people can find home. And Lauren and I and my boys and soon-to-be girl have found home.
That's great, mate. That's fantastic. Well, listen, time always goes way too quick when we do these interviews. You could do it another couple of hours. But listen, I would like to say this to you two. The only reason why church can be healthy is because you have people leading it that are healthy. Health doesn't just produce itself in 2 minutes. It takes a lifetime. And the lessons that you guys have learned and the things that you've gone through have produced in you, a believability, a credibility. You get people. You love God and you love people, and everybody loves you for it. You're great pastors. And rather than, just have a bunch of leaders who have got the titles and the education and the awards and all the rest of it, I know we're blessed with couples like yourself that are just the real deal. And you get God and you get people, and we're all the beneficiaries of that. So thank you for who you are, way more than even what you do, although what you do is pretty fantastic, I've got to tell you. So thanks for being so open, so vulnerable. I know that's going to help a lot of people, encourage a lot of people. And, there might be people listening out there. Just let me say it one more time. The way you are today can look wholly different than the way you can be in your future if you give God the chance to do what he's done in their lives, the same as in thousands, millions of others across the globe. So thanks for listening. Steve and friends, we'll chat to somebody else next time out. In the meantime, stay safe, stay full of faith, look after yourselves, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, DK. Thanks, Lauren. Take care.